The underestimated species. The Galactic Confederation had existed for over 15,000 years, a fact its senior members never missed an opportunity to mention whenever humans entered a room. Humanity had stumbled onto the galactic stage barely 30 years ago, when our first experimental faster-than-light probe accidentally transmitted its existence to a passing Zethri diplomatic vessel. Our entrance into galactic society wasn't exactly graceful, more like crashing a formal dinner party while wearing muddy boots and asking for the bathroom. They've barely figured out how to leave their solar system without breaking something, was the popular sentiment echoed throughout the hallowed chambers of the Confederation Council. Yet somehow, through what the Araxian ambassador called a disturbing mixture of blind luck and reckless persistence, humanity had secured itself a seat at the grown-ups table. The Joint Galactic Military Academy on Centauri Station represented the Confederation's begrudging acknowledgement that these peculiar bipeds from Earth might eventually prove useful. Established as a gesture of goodwill, which translated to a convenient way to keep tabs on the unpredictable newcomers. The Academy trained cadets from all 42 member species in the art of defending the galaxy from threats both external and internal. What the Academy really taught, however, was hierarchy. The six-limbed Vraxians, with their millennia of military tradition, naturally assumed command positions. The telepathic Zethri handled intelligence operations. The silicon-based Durendi managed engineering and propulsion systems. And humans were good at being enthusiastic. They're like juveniles playing at war. Supreme Commander Crozar of the Vraxian Imperium had once remarked during a faculty meeting, his 4 secondary arms flexing with irritation. Eager, disorganized, and completely unaware of their limitations. His towering 3-meter frame and chitinous exoskeleton commanded immediate respect from peers, while his 27 battle honors ensured unwavering obedience from subordinates. The power structure was clear. Ancient species at the top, intermediate civilizations in the middle, and humans firmly at the bottom, convenient foot soldiers for the galactic elite. Everyone understood this arrangement. Everyone except the humans, who had this irritating habit of not knowing their place. Cadet First Class Maya Chen had never planned on becoming the unwitting representative of humanity's potential. Growing up in the crowded arcologies of New Shanghai, she had joined the Confederation forces for the same reason most humans did: the promise of seeing something besides Earth's increasingly overcrowded megacities. That, and the universal healthcare. Another thrilling lecture on Vraxian battle formations, Maya muttered to herself, navigating Centauri Station's curved corridors while reviewing notes on her datapad. Because apparently the key to galactic security is arranging ourselves in perfect geometric patterns while the enemy conveniently waits for us to finish. What Maya lacked in reverence for tradition, she made up for with a biochemist's understanding of xenobiology and a street fighter's instinct for survival. Her educational assessment had labeled her problematically innovative, high praise on Earth, but practically an insult within the rigid Confederation hierarchy. 3 years at the Academy had taught her to keep her more creative solutions to herself, at least until absolutely necessary. Unlike her classmates, many of whom had been genetically engineered for military service since conception, Maya had clawed her way into the Academy through a combination of raw aptitude scores and what her entrance interviewer had described as concerning levels of stubborn determination. She was shorter than average, faster than expected, and had developed the peculiar human ability to appear completely unremarkable until the exact moment it became advantageous not to be. Supreme Commander Crozar, meanwhile, had developed a special interest in the human contingent, the way a xenobiologist might take interest in particularly unpredictable laboratory specimens. His 27 battle honors weren't merely decorative. Each represented a campaign where his tactical brilliance had crushed an enemy of the Confederation. His exoskeleton, naturally blue-black and intimidatingly reflective, was augmented with ceremonial etchings detailing his lineage back 50 generations. The humans continue to disappoint, Crozar reported during his weekly communication with the Vraxian High Command. They lack the physical prowess of the Durendi, the mental discipline of the Zethri, or the technological intuition of the Araxians. They are exceptional in no respect. What truly bothered the Supreme Commander, though he would never admit it, was how humans simply wouldn't accept their mediocrity, especially the Chen woman, who had the audacity to question a 27 Honor Commander's tactical assessment during last week's simulation. The tensions at the Academy weren't always obvious to the untrained eye. They manifested in subtle ways. The Vraxians accidentally shoving humans in the dining hall, instructors calling on non-human cadets first despite raised hands, training partners suddenly unavailable when humans needed to practice. Just another day in interstellar harmony, Maya remarked to her roommate, a Zethri named Talia whose telepathic receptors had the unfortunate habit of glowing bright blue whenever Maya told jokes. Perhaps, responded Talia, her receptors shifting to a worried purple, you should consider the strategic value of occasionally appearing less human. Maya grinned. Now where would the fun be in that? The Academy's infamous tactical response simulation was meant to separate future commanders from future cannon fodder. Holographic enemies, real weapons set to non-lethal, and actual consequences for failure. It was the Confederation's idea of educational entertainment. Today's scenario. Supreme Commander Krasar announced to the assembled cadets, his exoskeleton glinting menacingly under the training deck's lights, will test your ability to defend a civilian outpost against a Krevax insurgency. His compound eyes settled on the human section with what passed for a Vraxian smirk. Even the most rudimentary species should be able to grasp the parameters. Maya stood at parade rest, face carefully blank despite the not-so-subtle jab. The simulation was designed for failure. Everyone knew it. The Krevax were notorious for their unpredictable attack patterns, and defending civilians required spreading forces thin. The Academy's unspoken rule was that an acceptable casualty rate meant keeping losses under 50%. Cadet Chen, Krasar's voice cut through the pre-simulation chatter. Your tactical recommendation. A trap. Maya knew it immediately. Answer correctly and be accused of insubordination. Answer incorrectly and confirm the commander's bias about human incompetence. Standard Confederation protocols suggest a concentric defense perimeter, sir, Maya answered, then added after a perfectly calculated pause. Though historical data indicates the Kravax typically exploit geometric predictability. Krasar's exoskeleton plates shifted, the Vraxian equivalent of narrowing eyes. Are you suggesting, Cadet, that Confederation protocols are flawed? Not at all, sir. Merely considering the specific adversary. The simulation began with Maya assigned to the most vulnerable sector, naturally. What wasn't natural was how the Krevax attackers in her sector seemed to have their difficulty settings cranked well beyond training parameters. Someone's messing with the sims, hissed Cadet Lorax, a Durendi whose crystalline features were fracturing with stress as they ducked behind a holographic barricade. Maya didn't waste breath responding. 8 civilians were huddled behind them, programmed to exhibit realistic terror. 3 Kravax warriors had already flanked their position. The tactical display showed the rest of the defensive perimeter holding steady, while Maya's sector was being systematically overwhelmed. Cadet Chen, Krasar's voice came over the comms, dripping with artificial concern. Perhaps you'd like to implement your alternative to standard protocols. Your sector appears to be struggling. What happened next would become Academy legend, though not for the reasons Krasar had intended. Maya abandoned the defensive position, grabbed a civilian, and raced directly toward the oncoming Kravax. The holographic insurgents, programmed to take hostages when possible, hesitated just long enough for Maya to slide beneath them and reconfigure their supposedly secure communications array. When the dust settled, Maya's sector had not only survived but recorded the lowest civilian casualty rate. The cost. Maya had technically violated 23 different Confederation combat protocols. The debriefing was volcanic, unacceptable, reckless, completely outside established doctrine. Krasar's exoskeleton had shifted to a furious crimson as he loomed over Maya. You endangered civilians with your primitive improvisation. The civilians survived, sir, Maya responded, eyes forward, voice level. Because you got lucky, human. Luck isn't strategy. The tension in the debriefing room was thick enough to cut with a phase blade. The non-human cadets watched with a mixture of shock and secret admiration. No one challenged Supreme Commander Krasar. It simply wasn't done. The following days saw Maya assigned to increasingly impossible tasks, recalibrating quantum drives with outdated tools, running physical drills at 1.8 standard gravity, memorizing the entire Vraxian military code in original Vrax, a language notorious for its 23 tonal variations. He's trying to get you to quit, Talia observed as Maya returned to their quarters, exhausted but unbowed. Maya just grinned through her fatigue. Then he really doesn't understand humans at all. The breaking point came during the Academy's ceremonial review, with representatives from all 42 species in attendance. Dignitaries, military leaders, and the Academy's senior staff filled the grand observation deck as cadets demonstrated precision drills that had been perfected over millennia of Confederation history. No one missed how Krasar had positioned Maya at a critical juncture in the formation, where any mistake would be immediately obvious to all observers. What they didn't know was that Maya had been given the wrong coordinates during the briefing. As the ceremonial review approached its climax, Maya Chen stood ready, knowing full well what was about to happen, and that the next few minutes would either end her career or change everything about humanity's place in the stars. The breaking point. The ceremonial review unfolded with the precision of a quantum clock. Until it didn't. Maya stepped forward exactly when and where her instructions indicated, finding herself suddenly 5 meters out of position from the rest of the formation. The perfect arrangement shattered like cheap glass, other cadets forced to compensate for her error. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Even those unfamiliar with military precision could recognize the glaring disruption in the otherwise flawless pattern. Supreme Commander Krasar seized his moment, striding onto the parade ground with the theatrical timing of someone who'd been waiting for precisely this opportunity. Cadet Chen, he announced, his voice amplified for the benefit of the distinguished visitors. Perhaps you'd care to explain why you've chosen to disgrace the Academy today. Maya stood at attention, eyes forward. Sir, I followed the coordinates provided in my briefing. Sir, are you suggesting, Krasar's voice dropped to a dangerous purr, that someone gave you incorrect information? That the fault lies not with your human inadequacy but with my staff? The trap was sprung. Deny it and admit incompetence. Affirm it and accuse a superior officer. I am merely stating facts as I understand them. Sir, Maya replied, walking the razor's edge. The commander's exoskeleton flushed a deep crimson. Facts. Let me acquaint you with facts, human. He circled Maya like a predator. Fact. Your species has contributed nothing of value to the Confederation. Fact. Your presence at this academy is a political courtesy, nothing more. Fact. You lack the genetic refinement, the historical pedigree, and the basic capacity to function at our level. The assembled cadets and dignitaries watched in uncomfortable silence. This had moved beyond discipline into something uglier. Your continued presence here insults the 15,000 years of tradition upon which this institution stands, Krasar continued, now inches from Maya's face. Have you nothing to say? Maya remained at attention, eyes forward, face impassive. No excuse, sir. Something in Maya's composure, the refusal to be broken, pushed Krasar over the edge. His right upper appendage shot out faster than most eyes could follow. The slap cracked across Maya's face with enough force to snap her head sideways. The sound echoed through the suddenly silent chamber. For one frozen moment, no one moved. Physical discipline was against Academy regulations, but no one had ever seen a 27 honor commander challenged for anything. Maya slowly turned her face forward again, a thin line of red appearing where one of Krasar's exoskeletal ridges had cut her cheek. That's when everyone noticed it. the strange thing happening to Supreme Commander Krasar's hand. The appendage that had delivered the slap was trembling, then spasming. His exoskeleton, moments ago flushed crimson with rage, began rapidly shifting through colors. Blue, green, purple in patternless sequence. What? The commander's voice faltered, his compound eyes widening as he stared at his own quivering limb. What is happening? The tremors spread rapidly up his arm, across his thorax, down his legs. Within seconds, the mighty Vraxian was on his knees, all 6 limbs convulsing uncontrollably. Gasps and cries of alarm spread through the audience as medical personnel rushed forward. Maya hadn't moved. She stood in the same position, at perfect attention, a single drop of blood tracing a slow path down her cheek. "What did you do to me?" Krasar managed to gasp between spasms, his proud voice now reduced to a rasp. Maya's response was calm, almost clinical. "I did nothing, sir. My body, however, appears to have interpreted your action as a threat and responded accordingly." The Academy's chief medical officer, a Zethri named Dr. Naren, was scanning Krasar with increasing alarm. "He's experiencing a severe neurological reaction. I've never seen anything like it." She looked up at Maya. "What exactly happened?" "The commander struck me," Maya replied simply. "My epidermal defense system activated." "Your what?" Dr. Naren looked bewildered. Humanity evolved on a planet with numerous contact toxins, plants, insects, amphibians. We developed countertoxins as a defense mechanism. When threatened, our sweat glands can release compounds that are apparently quite effective against Vraxian physiology. A stunned silence fell over the parade ground. Krasar was now being loaded onto a medical transport, his mighty frame reduced to a twitching mass of chitinous plates. Admiral Filovex of the Confederation High Command, who had been observing the ceremony, stepped forward. His translucent Araxian tentacles were pulsing with what those familiar with his species recognized as extreme concern. "Are you saying," the Admiral's voice was carefully measured, "that humans can secrete neurotoxins through their skin?" Maya's expression remained neutral. "Only under extreme stress, Admiral. It's an autonomic response, not a conscious weapon. And it appears to affect different species in different ways." News spread through the Academy and the Confederation at quantum speeds. By the time Maya returned to her quarters, the entire station was buzzing with rumors, fear, and wild speculation. Talia was waiting, her telepathic receptors strobing a chaotic mix of colors. "You never mentioned this ability," she said as soon as the door closed. Maya sank onto her bunk, the adrenaline finally leaving her system. "Because it's not exactly an ability. More like an evolutionary holdover. Most humans don't even know they have it. It only activates under extreme threat. The commander will recover, according to Dr. Naren. No permanent damage. His pride will suffer more than his nervous system." Talia's receptors pulsed a thoughtful blue. "This changes everything." Maya looked up, suddenly exhausted. "Does it? Or does it just give them one more reason to fear us?" The following days were a blur of medical examinations, security briefings, and diplomatic panic. Every human at the Academy was subjected to intensive scanning as xenobiologists struggled to understand the exact mechanisms of what they were now calling the terrestrial defense response. Maya found herself isolated, physically by the medical quarantine, socially by the sudden wariness of her fellow cadets. The only exception was Talia, whose telepathic abilities apparently made her immune to human biochemistry. "They're afraid of you," Talia reported after returning from the dining hall. "Not just the cadets, the instructors too. The Durendi are demanding that humans wear sealed environmental suits at all times." "That's ridiculous," Maya sighed. "The response only triggers under extreme physical threat, and even then, it's localized to the point of contact." "Fear isn't rational," Talia reminded her, "especially when it comes from species that have never had reason to fear before. On the 5th day of her isolation, Maya received an unexpected visitor. Admiral Philovex himself glided into her quarantine chamber, his tentacles carefully tucked within his formal robes. "Cadet Chen," he acknowledged with a slight bow. "I trust you are being treated well as can be expected when you're suddenly the most dangerous human in the galaxy, sir." The Admiral's skin flushed a soft purple, the Araxian equivalent of a smile. "An exaggeration, surely. Our research indicates that all humans possess this defense mechanism." "All the more reason to treat us better," Maya said, then quickly added, "Sir." Indeed. Philovex settled onto a specially designed chair that accommodated his fluid physiology. "The Confederation Council has been in emergency session since the incident. The Vraxians are demanding your expulsion from the Academy, possibly the expulsion of all humans from Confederation space." Maya felt her heart sink. "And you're here to inform me of my dismissal?" "I am here," the Admiral's voice took on a deeper resonance, "to offer you a choice." He extended a tentacle, activating a holographic display. Supreme Commander Crozar violated multiple Confederation protocols with his actions. Physical assault of a cadet is grounds for immediate dismissal, regardless of species. However, his tentacles rippled with something like discomfort. "The political ramifications are complex. Because he's Vraxian and I'm human," Maya said flatly. "Precisely. The Vraxian Imperium is threatening to withdraw from the Confederation if one of their highest-ranking officers is publicly disciplined over what they term a minor incident with an inferior species." Maya fought to keep her expression neutral. "And what does the Confederation Council propose?" "A compromise. Commander Crozar will be reassigned to a remote outpost, a demotion in all but name. You will be allowed to complete your training at the Academy, but under certain restrictions." "What kind of restrictions?" The Admiral's skin darkened slightly. "You would be required to wear a suppression band, a device that inhibits your body's ability to produce the defensive compounds." Maya stood abruptly. "So I'd be defenseless, while still surrounded by species that now have even more reason to resent humans." "It is not ideal," Philovex admitted, "but it would allow the Confederation to save face while not entirely capitulating to Vraxian demands." "And if I refuse?" "Then both you and Commander Crozar would face a formal tribunal. The evidence would be presented publicly. The political fallout would be significant. And while the commander would almost certainly be found guilty, the repercussions for human-Confederation relations could last generations." Maya paced the small quarantine chamber, mind racing. She could fight this, demand justice, force the Confederation to acknowledge the wrong done to her. But at what cost to humanity's precarious position in galactic society? "I need time to think," she finally said. "Of course." The Admiral rose to leave. "But not too much time. The Council expects an answer within 24 hours. After he left, Maya sat in silence for a long while, weighing her options. Eventually, she activated her datapad and sent a message to Talia. "Need information. Urgently." 6 hours later, Maya stood before the Confederation Council, her decision made. The chamber was imposing. A vast hemispheric hall with concentric rings of seating rising up like the galleries of an ancient Roman Colosseum. Representatives from all 42 member species watched with varying degrees of interest, concern, or outright hostility. Admiral Philovex presided from the central podium. "Cadet First Class Maya Chen, you have been called before this council to respond to the events that occurred during the ceremonial review at the Joint Galactic Military Academy. Before you state your decision regarding the proposed compromise, is there anything you wish to say?" Maya stepped forward, conscious of the hundreds of alien eyes fixed upon her. "Yes, Admiral, there is." She took a deep breath. What she was about to do could change everything, for better or worse. "I have been asked to wear a suppression band as a condition of my continued enrollment at the Academy. This device would disable an involuntary biological defense mechanism that every human possesses, a mechanism that activates only when we are under direct physical threat. Her voice grew stronger. I find it interesting that the Council's solution is not to ensure humans aren't physically threatened, but rather to ensure we remain vulnerable when we are. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Villavex's tentacles rippled with concern. Cadet Chen, I must caution you. With respect, Admiral, I haven't finished. Maya squared her shoulders. During my isolation, I took the liberty of researching the biological defense mechanisms of other Confederation species. The Durendi secrete crystalline bards when threatened. The Zethri can emit telepathic shock waves. The Araxians produce a paralyzing nerve agent. And the Vraxians. She looked pointedly at the Vraxian delegation. Possess retractable venom spikes capable of killing most humanoid species within seconds. She let that sink in before continuing. Yet none of these species are required to suppress their natural defenses. Only humans are asked to make themselves vulnerable as the price of acceptance. The difference, growled the Vraxian representative, is that these mechanisms are well documented and understood. Yours is an unknown variable. Unknown only because you never bothered to ask, Maya countered. Earth has extensive research on human biochemistry, which we have offered to share multiple times. Those offers were declined as irrelevant to Confederation interests. She turned back to the entire Council. I will not wear a suppression band, nor will I demand a public tribunal that might damage human Confederation relations. Instead, I propose a third option, a comprehensive xenobiological exchange program between Earth and the Confederation, to ensure all member species understand each other's biological capabilities and limitations. No more surprises, no more fear. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, translated through hundreds of communication devices, into a babble of protests, questions, and occasional support. Admiral Villavx had to activate the chamber's sonic dampers to restore order. This is unprecedented, he finally said. The Council will need to deliberate on your proposal. Of course, Maya agreed. And while you deliberate, I will return to my duties at the Academy, without restrictions. That is not. It is entirely appropriate, she interrupted, her voice firm. Unless the Council is prepared to apply the same restrictions to every species with biological defense mechanisms. Equal treatment under Confederation law. Isn't that one of your founding principles? The silence that followed was deafening. Maya had backed the Council into a corner with their own principles, and everyone knew it. Finally, Admiral Villavx spoke. The Council will recess to consider Cadet Chen's proposal. In the meantime, she may return to the Academy under standard protocols. As Maya left the chamber, escorted by Confederation security, she caught a glimpse of Talia waiting in the antechamber. The Zethri's receptors were glowing a brilliant gold, their color for admiration. That, Talia said when they were alone in the transport shuttle, was either the bravest or most foolish thing I have ever witnessed. Maya allowed herself a small smile. With humans, it's usually both. The human advantage. The academy that Maya returned to was markedly different from the one she had left. News of her confrontation with the Council had spread faster than a quantum transmission, transforming her overnight from that troublesome human cadet to something approaching a legend. Cadets from species that had previously ignored her now watched her pass with a mixture of curiosity, respect, and wariness. Instructors who had dismissed her contributions suddenly found themselves paying closer attention to her insights. Even more surprising was the small group of cadets from various species who began to gather around her, those who had always chafed under the rigid hierarchy of the academy but had never found the courage to challenge it. Maya found herself at the center of an unlikely coalition of outsiders and freethinkers. "You actually stood up to the entire council," said Drax, a Durendi whose crystalline structure shimmered with admiration. "No one does that." "I just pointed out their hypocrisy," Maya replied, trying to downplay her actions as they sat together in the Academy's Arboretum, one of the few places where the environmental conditions suited all their diverse physiologies. "That's exactly why they fear humans," said Korlak, a hulking Tellarite whose species was known for their engineering prowess rather than diplomatic tact. You see the cracks in our perfect systems. Talia's receptors pulsed thoughtfully. The Confederation has existed for so long that many of its principles have calcified into dogma. No one questions them anymore, except humans. That's because we're new, Maya said. We haven't had time to develop the same reverence for tradition. It's more than that, Talia insisted. Your species evolved on a planet of constant change and challenge. Most Confederation species developed on worlds with stable environments, allowing for specialized adaptations and predictable development. Humans had to become adaptable generalists just to survive. Maya considered this. So you're saying our greatest strength is that we're mediocre at everything? I'm saying, Talia's receptors glowed intensely, that your species never specialized because you never needed to. Instead, you developed something far more valuable: adaptability. Their conversation was interrupted by an academy-wide alert. All cadets were being summoned to the main auditorium for an emergency briefing. As they hurried through the corridors, speculation ran wild. Maybe they've decided to expel all humans after all, Drax suggested darkly. Or perhaps they're announcing new protective measures against the terrifying human toxins, Korlak added with a rumbling laugh. But when they entered the auditorium, the atmosphere was far from punitive. Admiral Thilovex himself stood on the stage, flanked by Academy officials and several Confederation military officers Maya didn't recognize. Cadets, the Admiral began once everyone was seated. I come before you today with grave news. 3 standard days ago, a Confederation outpost in the Vega sector went dark. Initial reconnaissance suggests an attack by forces unknown to our intelligence services. Holographic images appeared above the stage. A remote station torn apart, debris floating in the void. The damage pattern was unlike anything Maya had seen before, not explosive or kinetic, but almost dissolved. The attackers left no survivors, but our sensors did capture this before communications were lost. The Admiral nodded, and a short recording played. The footage showed a Confederation officer, his uniform torn, face streaked with blood. Behind him, something moved in the shadows, something that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. They're immune to our weapons, the officer was saying, voice tight with pain. Standard protocols ineffective. His eyes widened in horror, looking at something off-screen. They consume everything. The transmission cut off abruptly. A heavy silence fell over the auditorium. We believe we are facing a previously unknown species, Admiral Thilovex continued. One that appears hostile and highly dangerous. The Confederation Council has authorized the deployment of a response fleet, including the contingent from the Academy for support roles. Murmurs spread through the audience. It was unprecedented for cadets to be called up for actual combat operations. This is not a decision made lightly, the Admiral added, but the situation demands all available resources. Your instructors will provide operational details. Deployment begins in 12 hours. As the briefing concluded and cadets filed out in stunned silence, Maya felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. It was Admiral Thilovex himself. Cadet Chen, a word, if you please. Maya followed the Admiral to a small conference room adjacent to the auditorium. Inside, she was surprised to find Dr. Naren and several other senior xenobiologists. What you're about to hear is classified at the highest level, Thilovex began once the door sealed behind them. Our preliminary analysis of the attack suggests that these creatures, whatever they are, possess a unique biological composition. They appear to be some form of metallic organic hybrid, capable of absorbing and incorporating materials they encounter. Dr. Naren stepped forward, including our weapons technology. Energy weapons are simply absorbed, making them stronger. Physical projectiles are incorporated into their mass. So they're basically immune to our standard arsenal, Maya said, the implications sinking in. Why tell me this? The Admiral's tentacles rippled with what might have been embarrassment. Because of recent Revelations about human biological capabilities. We have been reassessing our understanding of Earth's evolutionary history. Dr. Naren has a theory. The Zethri doctor nodded. Earth developed an unusual number of toxic and defensive compounds in its biosphere, far more than most Confederation homeworlds. This may have been partially responsible for humanity's development of your impressive internal detoxification systems and counteragents. You think human biochemistry might be effective against these things? Maya asked, incredulous. We don't know, Dr. Naren admitted. But we're facing an enemy that seems impervious to our conventional weapons. We need unconventional solutions. And suddenly, the human biological threat becomes an asset. Maya couldn't keep the irony from her voice. Admiral Filovex's skin darkened. I understand your skepticism, Cadet. But this is larger than academy politics or species pride. If these creatures cannot be stopped, they pose an existential threat to all Confederation species, humans included. Maya studied the Admiral's expression, searching for deception, but finding only genuine concern. What exactly are you asking of me? Join a special research team with Dr. Naren. Help us understand if human biochemistry offers any advantages against this threat. This is not an order. Given the nature of the work, it must be entirely voluntary. Maya thought about the terrified officer in the recording, about the academy that had marginalized her species, about the Confederation that had only days ago debated restricting human biological functions. She thought about Earth, still new to the galactic community, still vulnerable. I'll do it, she said finally, but I want something in return. The Admiral's tentacles stiffened. This is not a negotiation, Cadet. Actually, it is. You need something only humans can provide. That gives us leverage, something we've never had before. Maya met his gaze steadily. If my assistance proves valuable, I want the Council to reconsider humanity's status within the Confederation. Full membership rights, equal standing with the founding species. For a long moment, Filovex was silent. Then, slowly, his tentacles relaxed. I cannot speak for the entire Council, but I can promise that your contribution will be acknowledged at the highest levels, and I, his skin flushed a deep purple, will personally advocate for humanity's advancement. Then we have a deal. Maya extended her hand, then quickly withdrew it. Sorry, probably not a good idea to shake on it. The Admiral's skin rippled with what might have been laughter. Indeed. Let us hope your species' unique qualities prove as effective against our enemy as they were against Commander Krasar. As Maya followed Dr. Naren to the research facilities, Talia fell into step beside her, having waited outside the conference room. You're planning something, the Zethri said, her telepathic receptors glowing with concern. Something dangerous. How do you know? Maya asked. Because I know you. And because you have that look, the one humans get when they're about to do something either brilliant or suicidal. Maya smiled grimly. With humans, it's usually both. The research lab was already a hive of activity when they arrived. Xenobiologists from multiple species were analyzing samples, running simulations, and debating theories. At the center of it all was a seal,